I've decided to do the review for this sword again using kind of the behind the scenes version as opposed to being in front of the camera. Quite honestly, I did the recording for my usual, intro, and the wind was blowing and I just didn't want to do it, so I thought I'd ramble here on a little bit as we're unboxing it. This is pretty all standard boxing when it comes to swords. A, coming from Hanwei. B, coming from Cult of Athena, which is where I got this one from. Cult of Athena tends to be a pretty reasonable place to get a lot of Hanwei's stuff. And so you saw the pretty sparse packing in there. This is really an economy line version of one of Hanwei's swords. One of the interesting things about this sword is that it's got some features from the Raptor series, which tend to be very popular. This is some of the literature that often comes with Hanwei stuff. Everything from how to take it apart, to how to put it back together, how to oil it, how to tighten up the scabbard if you wanted to. Usually Hanwei scabbards come rather loose. This one did. As usual, Hanwei scabbards do come rather loose, although you'd rather have it loose than too tight, because otherwise you end up breaking it. But anyway, what I was saying is this is really Hanwei's attempt to further popularize and sell their famous 5160 blades that were made so famous in the Raptor series. It's interesting that probably the two most favorite features that have come out of that series, they have repeated here, only in a slightly cheaper format. A, you have the leather Edo wrap, although it's not nearly as bulky as the tsukas that we had on the Raptor series. So if that was a typical problem of yours, where you had the tsukas on the Raptor series just be too bulky, you won't find that here. This is the Mokku Renshu Katana from Hanwei, and this one does feature a bohi. I tend to really like them from both an aesthetic point of view. I like the takakazi sound of the wind effects. It is a nice little training tool, and it's nice to know where your blade is going. But anyway, the two big features that came over from the Raptor series, actually there's three. There's the 5160 blades, usually very tough, very sharp. Two, the kind of suede leather Edo wraps, although on this one was definitely a less bulky blade, which actually made for a nice feeling in the hand. You guys see right in the box here, it's cut and paper, so it's starting off, very nice. It immediately felt very light in the hand. It was sharp. Everything came, all the fittings were nice and tight. So my initial impressions here are pretty good, and it's slicing through the paper pretty well. So again, we have the 5160 blades. We have the suede leather wrap on the Edo, and also the kind of textured finish of the saya. So it seems as though there really is an attempt here to kind of bring those over only in a slightly cheaper format. And there were a couple things here that were definitely cheaper. You don't have on the we're going to see an up close look here at the fittings. The fittings are very simple. They are textured. From what I understand, they're advertised as iron, but other reviewers have commented that they've tried the magnet test and it doesn't really happen. So what they're actually made of, not really sure. But the tsuba and the Fushin Kashira are very plain Jane. They aren't the themed style of the Raptors, so you're not paying for that. That is, those castings actually are rather nice on the Raptor series. So there's a cost there that you're not paying for here. They're very straightforward. They're actually kind of nice. So here we have a closer up look at it. So it's very simple. There's this nice little bevel that's around the edge of the tsuba, and again, very simple. It's very, very straightforward. Now the other thing that I'll mention here in a minute when we start looking at some other people's footage of the sword are some criticisms possibly of how the handle is made. This is also an area in which there's been some criticism of this model, although I haven't seen any definitive footage actually showing it. It's more people kind of anecdotally saying, well, I heard this, I read this on a message board, but no one's actually shown pictures of it, so not really sure. So here's some up close, look at some of the features of the sword, the textured finish of the saya, the sword overall. So overall, a nice impression of this sword kind of right out of the box. So at this point, we're going to be looking at a couple other people's impressions of these swords. This is Ogura Steve's impression of this sword. One of the very interesting things about it that he kind of goes over is his impression of what he thinks of the build of the sword. And this is where I'm going to kind of pick up where I left off on the unboxing. One of the issues that he brings up is basically at this point in his review, he says that the Samagara wrap is actually plastic. And I can say that that's pretty true. You can actually, move your fingers through it and you can feel how smooth and slippery they are. The other thing that he says is that the cap at the end of the sword, the kashira piece right here at the end that he's pointing at right here, is actually affixed on with glue. Now, he didn't show it taken apart. I didn't see in mine any glue or goop, anything kind of showing through, so I don't know how substantiated that is. He does some cutting footage here, and mostly it's water bottles. He also made a mention that his sword did not necessarily come sharp. And so I think in some other footage that I did not include here, he mentions that he did have to sharpen it. That's kind of a cool move. He had a smaller bottle on top of another one. He cut it, and the smaller bottle dropped into the bottom one. See, he's trying to do a couple other times here, but yeah, he gets some really good shots in. And so, I mean, he's showing the sword for what it is, and that is those 5160 blades are backyard cutter blades. They're good beater blades, and he's, again, I don't know if he really did sharpen it, but he cut some pool noodles with it, and he whacks a few bottles, and it's doing what it's designed to do, and that is cut. Freestyle Swordsman. This clip was actually mixed in with another video, so I've kind of extrapolated the cuts that he said were done with the Mokku Renshu katana. And I think in some comments he made on other videos where people were reviewing this, he also commented, I think, that he had sharpened this sword. I may be wrong on that. If I am, I do apologize. So I'm not sure on that. But it does bring up an interesting point about this sword, and that is some people have commented that when they got it, the blade wasn't all that sharp. It was some people actually accuse it of actually being dull. Now, I guess I was lucky because I kind of thought my sword was pretty sharp out of the box. I mean, it always can be sharper. Katanas tend to have a higher standard when it comes to how sharp people want them. But so these last two people did a, I'm not sure they sharpened it, but certainly they're showing some test tube footage. Now this is the blade shop's footage of the sword. It's just some up close footage. There's not too much commentary or anything. So I'm going to take a minute here to kind of talk about this sword from this point of view. And that is, the one that I got happened to be one that was all nicely neat and put together. This is a perfect example of what I call a mass-produced katana. This is a mass-produced, Chinese-made, Japanese-style katana. And it not only it was a good example of everything done right, but it's also an example of everything that can go wrong. And in some of these other reviews, you heard about that. I've read on other message boards, they get these things where the pieces aren't fitted tightly together. The blade isn't straight. It's dull. Unfortunate with Hanwei, because of just the amount of material they put out there, it is a bit of a shot in the dark as to whether or not it's going to get to you in the shape that you should expect it. I fully agree and accept the fact that the one that I got was in pretty good shape, and it was sharp enough to do what you're going to see me do here in just a little bit, and everything stayed together, and it stayed nice and tight even after I was done cutting with it. My turn cutting. Now, as I mentioned a little bit during the unboxing, this sword is incredibly light, and unlike the Raptors, where the handles were, I guess you could say, more of that typical Hanwei, almost axe handle-ish, overbuilt kind of handles, this handle was extremely, very skinny in the hand. I mean, I almost thought it was almost too skinny. But this sword is very, very lightly built, and the Edo wrap on it is very comfy. If you've seen a lot of my other videos, whether it be katanas or European pieces, I typically wear gloves. I wanted to just demonstrate here that the Edo wrap on this was so comfy, I didn't really feel the need to wear gloves. And I do like the leather, that suede leather that they get on the wraps. And I'm practicing some drawing here, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't, but we try it. There's been a lot of you that have been commenting about me needing to get a sword stand. I agree, I need a sword stand. Up until now, you've probably seen me with this large center box in the middle. Well, that thing kind of fell apart too, and I keep on trying to find, a nice center display right in the center, and keep on running out of options around my house. So I think I'm just gonna have to buck up and build one. The design for them tends to be pretty easy. But anyway, one of the things about this that was really nice was the blade came extremely straight. There was no curvature in it whatsoever. I've had Hanweis before that, as much as I like them, they had a bend in them right out of the box. Now I'm trying here a bit of a technique where you that I actually saw freestyle swordsmen play, where you hover the blade just over the targets and you focus your attack on one quick strike rather than swinging it down with a lot. So I'm practicing that with the milk bottle, since it really doesn't take a whole lot to cut through them. Now, these bigger juice models, as I've mentioned before, sometimes they don't cut very well. And, they're not really meant to. They're rounded on the edges and they don't really cut. That one worked really cool. Now, this thing really went splat when I hit it. It really cut quite nicely. By the time I pull it up here, it's like, okay, there's nothing left. Fortunately, with those kind of bottles, there's not a lot left to them. A little bit more commentary about this sword. As we mentioned, there were some places where Hanwei has cut corners on this particular sword. This sword comes in at under $300. I think they're currently priced on a number of places for like 280. Now that bottle just would not break. This thing is typically my big challenge, no matter how sharp of a sword I've got. It really has to be quite sharp to slice through these things. Uh, these are these really heavy juice bottles, and most of the time they just bounce right off the sword. I know my edge alignment sucks, and I've got to try and do it better, and hopefully it'll look better when I get that wonderful sword stand so many of you keep on telling me I need to get. So we'll see. Um, anyway, as I was saying, is the this line of swords really is designed to be kind of the best of both worlds between Hanwei's practical series and the Raptor series. The Raptor series came out, from what I understand, a little over 10 years ago. And since that time, there have been a number of complaints about its overbuilt nature. And so I think what they did was they took those blades and took some of those attributes from them that most customers tend to like, and they put it on a much more of a practical katana build. The handles on these are very comfortable. In fact, it actually has an hourglass shape to it, much more. That's not something that we would get with the Raptor series. So, coming to the end here, I hope this has been informative for you guys. As always, wipe these blades off, oil them down. They are made of high carbon steel. Like I said, I hope this has been informative for you. Hope I've given you guys some insight, shared with you guys some other people's opinions and what they've thought of this sword. This is a real nice bargain buy at the price. A really good sword for an introductory sword for people learning how to do it, or for just someone who wants something cheap but has a nice look in the backyard. So we'll see you all later.